Welcome to this DDI CADcast. I am Maurice Cherian. We'll be talking about the Configuration Publisher tool today. So the agenda is going to be going over the Configuration Publisher tool, and then I'm going to go over the design table requirement. Is you need to have a design table that will help create the configs of your part or an assembly. And then go over the mate reference. The mate reference geometry, where you can make a part snap into place, very similar to a toolbox fastener part. And then I'm going to actually go into how to use the Configuration Publisher, show you an example of it, show you how it's used in an assembly, and then show you how to change the configuration once a component's already been placed. The Configuration Publisher is a tool. It helps create a customizable interface that allows for an easier, more intuitive selection of configured parts or an assembly by using options or the parameters to create the configuration instead of having to pick it from a list. The functionality is very similar to using a toolbox library part, where you can, in this case, make your own customizable library of fasteners or other types of parts. The nice thing about a Configuration Publisher interface for your configured parts is that you don't have to know the part, you don't have to know how all the configurations were named and how it was created. You can use these dialog boxes to answer questions, and then it will put the part in, and you don't have to go through every single configuration. Which configured part has a lot of configurations, it could take a long time. So one of the nice things is that if this part has multiple configurations, you don't have to know the part real well. You don't have to rely on the configuration names to be descriptive enough to be able to pick the right one. You can use these dialog boxes that ask you questions to get you down the right path to get the right configuration for your part. So first I'm going to talk about the design table. The design table is a requirement for using the Configuration Publisher. Now, design tables, if you've never used them before, it's an Excel-based version of creating a configuration. Some people really like it because it's all showing everything in one place. The configuration name is in the first column. You can configure on dimension, on states, number of instances of a pattern. You can also put in color and other things in there, even file properties. To create a design table, it's under Insert, the Insert menu drop down, and it's Insert Table, Design Table, and there's an option to Auto Create. That Auto Create will create configurations from the existing ones and put them into the table so you don't have to recreate those from scratch. A lot of times it's nice to have a few configs because then you can understand the syntax better once it creates the table. You can bring up Excel in its own window, or you can use it right inside of SOLIDWORKS. So I'm going to go into SOLIDWORKS and show you how to use the design table. So I have a real simple part, and this simple part is just a box with a hole in it. I do recommend that you create names that make sense here. So I have my base extrude in this part. I'll rename this to center hole, and this one I'll call the base block. One thing I recommend is you can turn on, under view, you can turn on the, under D1, view dimension names, or over here, view dimension names. And you can turn on under annotation, you can say show feature dimensions here. And you can see it says width and height. You can actually go into these dimensions by just going to the modify box, and I'll change this one to depth so you can see it better. This will make it easier to understand how the design table is laid out with these different options. So for example, to create a table, you say Insert, Table, Design Table, and here's Auto Create. So if I already had some configs, it would create those in there. And now you can see it's bringing up all these options for me. So I'll go ahead and control select them all. It'll bring them into the Excel spreadsheet. And again, you can open this up in its own window. And you can see it says default, and you can see I can name them any value I want. And you can see there's width, height, and depth. So I'll make a big config. And also make a medium one here. And a small one. Now, one of the things that's a little tricky with using a design table is you need to know how do you add the state of this hole here. How do you turn on and off this hole? We're going to see this with my example with a tire where I turn on and off some knobby extrusions or a groove cutout and change some other things that where we turn on and off features. So if I select and highlight here and double click on here, you'll see now it says state of the center hole. So for example, I'll make one that says small, no hole. And what I do is I select here, I can say suppress will be it's off, unsuppressed means it's on. And you can type out the whole word unsuppress or type in suppress if you want, but the S is good enough to show it here. Once I'm done editing this, how I get out of this window is I click outside of the table and it will create the configs. Big, medium, small, and small with no hole. And now you can see it shows them in purple color for the dimensions, so you can see which ones have been configured. I didn't actually configure the circle, but now you can see what I did was here's big, here's medium, here's small, and here's small with no hole. So you can see the dimensions change accordingly. And that one has no hole in it now. So that's the design table. How do you get to it and edit it again? You can right click, you can say edit table or edit table in new window. Usually people like to open up in its own window so you can see this a little bit better. It does usually bring up a dialog box trying to add more things to it. So here's the table, and usually just to help people see this better, you can see configuration name, dimension, 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 and then here's state. State is either unsuppressed or suppressed, so it's either unsuppressed it's on, suppressed it's off. And you can save and you can close out of this. You do need to close out of this to get back into SOLIDWORKS to gracefully handshake it back over to SOLIDWORKS. Alright, now that I've showed you how to make a design table, and you can add more inside the table or out. I'll go back into the PowerPoint slides to show you how to now make the mate reference too. Mate references are going to be an optional to using the configuration publisher, but we do really recommend it because it's so much easier to use these. Some people use them for electrical connectors, for routing. Definitely the toolbox fasteners have mate references, and I'll show you under the hood what most of those fasteners use for their mate reference. You can basically have an edge, face, or vertex be used to make a shortcut, like a smart mate. Instead of having to alt drag something, it'll snap in place. And how you create a mate reference is using insert reference geometry mate reference. A mate reference folder is added to the feature tree, and that can be edited, or you can add more references to it later. So I'm going to go back into SOLIDWORKS now, and I'm going to use one of my parts here. Here's the wheel that we're actually going to configure. This one I've already added a mate reference. How do I know that their mate reference has been added? There's a folder for it here. You can see reference geometry. Here's how you can create a mate reference, or you can go to insert, reference geometry, mate reference. So two ways to get there. I'm going to open up a part that hasn't had that added to it yet. So this is a wheel. I'm going to have this be the front, and I'm going to add a mate reference to this edge here. And this is going to make this very grabby so that it will lock in place and snap into place. So we go to reference geometry, mate reference, or insert reference geometry, mate reference, and I'll select the edge. This is one of those situations where less is more. You don't have to use all three of these. There's a primary, secondary, and tertiary. Usually for most of these countersinks they use faces, but for counter bore usually it's just going to be an edge that they use. And you can see there's default, there's align, anti-align, closest. For this case I usually just pick the edge, pick default in any. If you did pick a face, you can see it does have tangent, coincident, and parallel, so you can see there's more to it. And then aligned and anti-aligned. Aligned would mean that the normal would be facing the same direction. Anti-aligned means the two face normals would be opposite to each other. So anti-aligned would be something that you would use when you're creating a connector pair, a male-female connector pair. So in this case, I'm not going to use this second one. I'm just going to keep it as an edge with default in any here. So I'll go ahead and say OK to that. So you can see now that it's going to have a mate reference folder, and you can see I already have one in here, so I'll delete that one. So I have the one in here. You can always go back and edit it. So we got the edge. Now let's go back to the slides. So now we finally get into the configuration publisher. Now how do you actually create the part to have the configuration publisher have the dialog box that you're looking for? You right click over the file name and you select configuration publisher. It's going to open up a box where you're going to see a left, center, and right section, and there's going to be boxes on the left side that you can drag over into the center, and that's how you can create the configurable drop down list. And you're going to be able to change the labels, and you're going to be able to make it so that you can understand what you're selecting. And it can be things like changing the pattern instance. You can also change the dimensions. The states are either going to be unsuppressed or suppressed. So unsuppressed is on, suppressed is off. And then you can change the labeling so that it's very easy to understand what you're selecting. Very similar again to what the toolbox interface looks like when you're dragging in a fastener, if you've used that before. So now I'm going to go back over to SOLIDWORKS. And here's the part that we're going to go ahead and modify. Now this part happens to have, in this case it's got 12 different configurations. It's got a config with knobby tires, it's got one with grooves in it, then it just has a flat with no knobbies or without any grooves in it. It also has configs with 4 spokes and 5 spokes. So let me show you how the configuration publisher is set up. You right click, you go to configuration publisher, and what you do is it'll bring up the design table, and it's going to have the design table in the background, and now you're going to get this box here. And this dialog box does have Excel in the background still, so it'll close out Excel when it's done. These are all the boxes available to you. Now when you first look at these, they're not always going to make a lot of sense to you, so I usually name again the dimensions so they make sense. So you drag them over in the order you want to see them show up on the interface, the custom interface you're creating. So you drag them from the left over, and you can see it says list 1. Not very descriptive. So you can write in here outside tire diameter here, and you can even say if it's in in inches or not if you wanted to, so you can actually put in some unit information if you need to, if it helps. Outside tire diameter, so that's the first one. Now I'm going to drag over some other ones here. The next one I'm going to bring over is the number of spokes. The configs have a 4-spoke and a 5-spoke option, so I'll put in here, instead of list 2, which doesn't mean anything to anybody, I'll put number of spokes, so you can name it and label it. And I put them in the order I want to see them in. So I'll put the tire diameter first, number of spokes second, and now I'll add another one to it, and this is going to be the knobby extrusions that turn into a pattern. So here I'll just put in here off-road, and so you can make it more descriptive and even add more, but we usually keep it to about 3 or 4 words at the most. The next one here is actually going to be the pattern of the knobby, so I'm going to leave that one out. You don't have to use them all. And then here, the last one is the grooves. So we'll say these are the street tire here. And it does have something for visibility, so if you had a parent-child type of relationship, you can change the parent visibility, so when you select something, if you want to see it open up for other menu selections. This last one here, I don't need to bring it in, it's for the circular pattern, so it's going to show, it's going to get turned on when I turn on the off-road selection. So if you ever want to remove one, you just right click and you can delete it, and it moves back over. So this order is in the order of the way I want to see it. So you can see I can move them around, you can drag them, you don't have to hold Alt or Control. So I got outside tire diameter, number of spokes, going to show the knobbies on and off, the groove on and off, and then if these both aren't selected, it's going to give me the slick tire. So first off, how do you see what this is going to look like? You can see the SW preview. This shows me what it's going to look like. You can see these drop downs are starting to pop in. You can see it does show the configuration. You can also do this. You can also go over to the 3D. What that stands for is 3D CC, is 3D Content Central Preview. And what I like about this is it does actually show a way to test all the configs. And now there's going to be 12 configs here. So it's going to create the configurations and make sure they're all working correctly. It'll even give you a log file, so it's very nice to test these out. If it's more than 15 or 20, it's going to take a while, so make sure you have time to check them all if you haven't already. The nice thing about this is it does go through all of them, and you can see in the background it's creating them. It actually will create a log file. 3D Content Central is something that you can actually update these files and upload them to their website, and so you can, if you have a part you want to show off, you can put it up there. If you can make it so it doesn't have any intellectual property, you can use it there. So what's nice about this is it's going to go through these, and if it has any trouble, it'll tell you in the log file if there's any issues with these. This is taking a little bit of time because there's some patterns here, so the patterns take a little bit of time for it to generate. And now it's all done. You can see it actually has a log file. It'll tell me if any of them didn't succeed. So all of them came up okay. Alright, so now that we have this here, I usually say update the model, and you can see it changed into one of the other configs. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and what it will do is it will close out Excel in the background too. Alright, so here is this wheel 2, and now we can see this in action. Now how do you know if the part has a configuration publisher dialog box? You go over to the configuration manager, and here is the property manager. I can right click, I can go to edit feature, I can look at it again. It again will bring up the design table, and you can see now it's showing me this dialog box. So again, you drag over from the left into the middle, and you can set up the order the way you want it. So I'll close this out. Now what we want to do is we want to test this out. Now I have an assembly, so I have a soapbox derby car here, and so we'll test this out. And the mate references, in this case the mate reference, will actually have this snap to the axle here the way we would want it to without having to click on mate and put the mates in manually. So how this works is you just bring it in just like you normally would. Insert component or insert component existing part / assembly. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring in the wheel, and once I drag it in, you'll see it will snap into place, and you'll see the peg and hole display, which means the mate reference is working. It's going to give me a coincident and a concentric mate at the same time, so I get a 2-for-1 deal here. Works very nicely. And as soon as I click it and accept that location, it pops into place, and you can see it says parameters and configuration name. So we want to use parameters, but you could actually pick configuration name, and you will see all of the configs here. So if you name them, you know, intuitively, you could actually use this, but most of the time it's a bunch of dash numbers, and it's a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense to anybody that didn't make the original part. So I'll go in here, go to parameters, and that's with default. And now you can see I can say I want to pick the sizes. Usually the derby size is actually 12, but I made a 13 here, 13-inch diameter. So you can see here's the diameter, the outside diameter of the tire. And then also I have the ability to change the spokes. So I have a 4-spoke and a 5-spoke. And then the last couple things I added was if you wanted to have it have the knobby pattern on here, I just click on off-road. If I don't want it, I can see it's a slick tire. And then I can also change it over to have grooves in there for the street here. So you can see I'm turning on and off features, suppressing or unsuppressing them. It's using the design table. The only thing it won't do is it won't create configs that aren't in the table. So you can't come up with a crazy combination that hasn't already had a config created. So it has to be in the table first, and then you can select it. So it won't make a config from scratch. It has to be in the table. And you can see down here on the bottom, it's telling me which config it's using. So you can see the different options here. So sometimes you'll have to unselect one to get another. So go ahead and say OK. Then let's try that again so you can see it one more time. So again, it's insert component. You grab the one you want to bring in, and you can see the peg and hole icon is showing up. So I'm going to get concentric and a coincident mate. Again, the dialog box comes up, and I can pick the diameter, number of spokes, and if I want to have the different tire styles. So you can have, I could have made another config where it had a white wall and, you know, more configs with different options, more spokes, things like that. So you can, you know, sky's the limit on this. So now you can see what it looks like. Now how do you change this? Let's go back to the slides for a second. So the more you describe those different options, the easier it is for people to be able to configure the parts and get the right configuration without having to guess. It's a nice interface. You're customizing the interface for your downstream users of your parts that have a lot of configurations. Now how do you switch configurations? When you have a configuration that was brought in with this configuration publisher tool, there's 2 ways to switch the config. So one of them is you can right click on the component and there's a selection of configure part / assembly, or you can right click on the component and you'll get to component properties. So either way, you can actually get to be able to swap out the configuration. And you can also even use this with the feature-driven component pattern to quickly place a bunch of components at one time. I'll try to show an example of that. So let's go back to the assembly. Now, how do you switch this over? When I right-click on it, the standard way is component properties. Now, component properties doesn't give you that cool dialog box, but you can still pick the different options here. So you right-click, and you can see component properties. Now if you want to bring up that cool interface again, the configuration publisher interface, you go over to the end here and you go configure part / assembly, and now I'm back to the interface again. So you can always get back to it, and you can see what it looks like there. So again, you just right click, either component property or configure part/assembly. That button is usually not available unless you have this part being brought in using that configuration publisher tool. Alright, now I'm going to show you one more example where you can use this feature driven component pattern to quickly place multiple instances of the part. So the feature driven component pattern is very nice, and you can use the same configuration publisher dialog box. So I'm going to go back to SOLIDWORKS now. So now I'm going to show you the feature driven component pattern so you can see an example of that. So this part has a configuration publisher dialog box. So this one has a mate reference, so I can snap this one into place. And now you can see it has the opening distance, and it also has if it's a deep size or a standard size. And then you can also see it has if it's a 6-point or a 12-point. And you can see it says checkbox 1 here. Someone didn't set that up very well, so we can check it. If it's checked, that means it's a 12-point. If it's unchecked, that means it's a 6-point. So we can actually go and fix that. So I'll go over to the configuration publisher, the configuration manager, right click, go to edit feature, and so now instead of it just saying checkbox, we can make it say something a little bit better than that. We can say 12-point. I'll hit apply, I'll close that out. I'll go ahead and remove it and put it back in again so we can see it from scratch. So say insert component, and now snap it into place. And now look at the dialog box. Now you can see now it says 12-point or 6-point. So you can see the interface is a little bit more intuitive now that I've changed the name there. And you can see I have different sizes here in this case. Now the pattern would be under linear pattern. Here's feature driven component pattern. So I'm going to pick the component, and then I'm going to pick the existing pattern. And now what's nice about this is now it just created all those instances very quickly, and I can right click on here and go to component property, and now I can use the name config, and I can swap it out that way too, so I can break the pattern if I need to. I'm going to go back to the slides. Now one last thing to talk about is the best practices for the configuration publisher. So I would rename all the features that are going to be configured so it's easier to select them and understand them in the design table, and that would be, you know, boss extrude or cut extrude is not going to make much sense to you, so name the features. And then also same with the dimensions, change the dimensions to, you know, hole diameter, tire radius, things that make sense, not just have it say D1. Make the labels as intuitive as you can, like when I change that one to 12-point or 6-point. Test out the dialog box, make sure it's working correctly, make sure the order's right, also make sure that the labels are intuitive, and then make sure all the configurations will work properly. If you wanted to add any kind of notes in the design table, the syntax that it accepts is $, capital user underscore notes. It is very particular. If you don't have the syntax right, it will just remove any text that doesn't make sense. It'll take out. So if you want to put some notes, you can, and it is recommended to help make sure that this stuff is easy to understand in the design table where all the configurations are stored. So thank you for watching our CADcast here today. My name again is Maurice Cherian. Thanks again for watching this CADcast. Please visit us at ddicad.com for more CADcasts and tech tips.